TechNet Saturday at 7 p.m. W5FC.
Skynet will start here in about 3 minutes. If you need to use the repeater, please do so before we start the net. This is N5BB.
This is the W5FC repeater, PL110.9.
Mr. Chairman, I need to make myself very clear. If we uplink now, Skynet will be in control of your military.
But you'll be in control of Skynet, right?
That is correct, sir.
Skynet.
Does anybody need to use the repeater before it begins Skynet? This is N5BB. And after sneezing, my name is Bill. November 5 Bravo Bravo. I'll be your net control for this session of the Dallas Amateur Radio Club Skynet. Skynet is a weekly net called every Saturday night at 9 p.m. concerning a subject of astronomy and space in general. Our purpose is to help amateurs become more familiar with the nighttime and daytime sky, astronomy, and space. This net is open to all amateurs interested in this topic, and we encourage your participation, comments, and suggestions for this net. Stations are with priority or emergency traffic near the net at any time using a pro-work break in your call sign. This is a directed net. Please do not transmit without direction from your net control, N5BB, and stations are reminded to identify at the end of your transmissions. This weekly net operates on 146.88 megahertz with a PL tone of 110.9. Check-ins via Echolink are possible using the W5FC-R station identification or Echolink 37247. And I am monitoring Echolink. Tonight's topics, astronomy charts, pictures, and live audio-video links are available online. Go to www.w5sc for the complete list. Remember to tell others about this popular net. All amateur operators are welcome. You need not be a member of any amateur radio club to participate. This is Inside BB, Skynet. The net is 90 minutes long, structured in several parts. General announcements, Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas, National Space Society, discussion topic of the evening by Net Control, Was Up, space exploration and space history, constellation of the week, space launches of the week, recent astronomical discoveries, and if we have time, visible satellite passages over the next couple of days, astronomical questions and answers. Then 73s. All amateurs licensed to transmit on this frequency are invited to check in. Now let's start. Can we have any short-time check-ins? Anybody that can't stay very long, please come now with your call sign, your name, and your location. This is N5BB, Skynet, short time. Well, that didn't have much effect. Now let's try RF, any RF check-ins, any general RF check-ins. Please come now with your name or your call sign. Excuse me. Please come now with your name and your call sign and your location. This is N5BB, Skynet, general RF check-ins.
This is Kilo India 5, Juliet Charlie Mike, Thomas in Euless with a bit of a head cold.
Kilo India 5, Uniform Alpha Uniform, David in Dallas.
Whiskey Alpha 5, Romeo Foxtrot Golf, Rollin, North Dallas.
Kilo Golf 5, Whiskey Victor Lima, James in Carrollton.
Whiskey 5, Bacon Lettuce Tomato, W5PLT, Bill, Garland.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike, Tony in Dallas.
November Victor 5, Foxtrot, Virginia in Fort Worth.
This is the X-ray, Tom, Louisville. This is Whiskey Bravo number 4, Mike Foxtrot, India, WB4MFI, Ted, Dallas, low power.
This is November 5, Oscar Foxtrot, Clay Evans.
This is Alpha 5, Alpha Hotel, Robert and Richards.
Hey, let's pause there. That was a pretty good run. I recognize Thomas, KI5JCM, David, KI5UAU, Rollin, WA5RFG, James, WVL. Sorry, James, that's KG5WVL. Bill, W5BLT, Tony, NT5TM. Virginia, NV5F. Tom, KE5ICX. Ted, WB4MFI. Clay, N5OF. And Robert, AA5A.
Whiskey Bravo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima, Brenda in DeSoto, Dallas.
Hello, Foxtrot 5, Papa Lima Lima, Huey Richardson.
Kilo 5, Juliet, Delta Whiskey, John and Coppell.
Kilo 5, Mike, Charlie Delta, Cody at Cyberdyne Systems, Dallas, Texas.
Okay, recognize Brenda, WB5OZL. That nearly she was so used to saying another city, she nearly gave the wrong one there. Huey, KF5D. Huey, is your call Kilo Foxtrot 5, Papa Lima Lima, is that correct?
Kilo Foxtrot 5, Papa Lima Lima, Huey.
We got it, Huey. K5PLL. John, K5JDW, and Cody, K5MCD. Do we have any other check-ins on RF for Skynet? If so, please come now. This is N5BB, Net Control. Okay, looking at Echolink. Melissa, KI5GRH, do you want to check in on voice? She might have been checked in from earlier on Echolink. Cruz, KI5, KWG, do you want to check in on voice? Well, same there. So they must not be there right now. Do we have anybody else that would like to check in on any mode to Skynet? If so, please come now. This is N5BB, Net Control for Skynet. Okay, do we have any general announcement for tonight's net? This can be related to amateur radio, astronomy, space, or anything of general interest to hams. If so, please come now with your call sign only. General announcements of any type.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike.
NT5TM. Go ahead, Tony.
Thank you, Bill. You know, it's December, so there's just a ton of stuff coming up because we've all got events for family and friends and our fellow club members. The Dark Meeting on the Air, open to any amateur who wants to share what's going on in their ham world or their bird world, is tomorrow at 7 p.m. on this repeater. The Racy's Training Net is tomorrow at 8 p.m. Everyone can listen. We're going to be talking about the U.S. National Grid, which is pretty fascinating because I'm a nerd, but only Racy's appointees can check in. And of course, this Monday we have Ham Fixins at 7 p.m. on the repeater. Now, tonight's movie is interesting, and I haven't had a chance to watch it, so I may not. I may just have to listen to everybody else. It's called Trancers from 1984. It's about travel through drugs. Not the drugs from CVS or Walgreens, not the drugs from Timothy Leary, but the drugs from Ancestry.com. That's the strangest kind of drugs. I really want to hear from other hams how they handled this. It's pretty strange. So that's 10:30 plus or minus about 5 minutes. And don't forget, of course, we have the Dallas Amateur Radio Club Pizza Party and Video Night coming up this Tuesday. Bring your pizza and your funny videos. We're meeting in our usual meeting location, the third-floor community room of the Dallas Medical Center, northeast corner of Webb Chapel and LBJ. Go into the main hospital building, sign in, take the elevator up to the third floor, and the only room that you can go to that has noisy people in it, yeah, that's us. But what if you dislike pizza? What if you dislike funny videos? Well, heck, even if you like those things, you can still join us this Thursday, 6:30 at Sonny Bryan's Barbecue on Campbell Road in Richardson. This is our winter diner, our formal winter, formal, I wear jeans and a polo shirt, our formal winter banquet, and we have great door prizes and raffle tickets and things. Come out and see us this Tuesday and this Thursday. Blow your diet with the DARC. NT5TM.
Thank you, Tony. The Irving Amateur Radio Club holiday party is Tuesday the 12th of December. That's Tuesday the 12th of December at Spring Creek Barbecue in Irving at 6 p.m. Does anybody else here on the net happen to know of any other local ham radio clubs' holiday parties beside Irving and Dallas? If you know the date and time of any other local club holiday parties, please come now. I guess not. I have no idea what other clubs besides the two we mentioned have holiday parties. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about Tony's items? Okay. On Tuesday evenings, except when there's a club meeting, Dallas club meeting, on Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m., there is a AMSAT net on this repeater, 146.88 at 8 p.m., about satellite things. You do not have to be a member of any club or group to participate. On Wednesday evening at 9 p.m., there's a similar net on the Arlington repeater. It was on the 147.14 megahertz repeater. Does anybody in the net know if they've moved that? There was some talk of moving it to a 440 repeater. Does anybody on the net? Well, what's written in the script is on the 147.14 megahertz repeater with a positive offset 110.9 tone. It's Wednesday evenings at 9 p.m. Dallas Amateur Radio Club has a lot of other nets. On the first week of the month, as Tony mentioned, on Monday evening, there's Ham Fixings net. Then on the other Mondays of the month, the second week, we have Emergency Communications. The third one, more Ham Fixings. Everybody likes food. The fourth Monday of the month, we have Geek net, all kinds of geeky things. The fifth week, if there is a fifth week, is a surprise net. If we told you what it was, it wouldn't be a surprise. Then on Tuesdays, I mentioned the AMSAT net at 8 p.m. on this repeater. And then on Fridays, the Cert City Simulation net at 8 p.m. If anything can go wrong, it goes wrong at Cert City. Learned about emergency radio communications in CERT, C-E-R-T. On Saturdays, we have TechNet at 7 p.m. And then, of course, Skynet at 9 p.m. And then at 10:30 p.m., we have Afterglow. Every day of the week, at 6:30 p.m. on this repeater, 146.88, we have the National Traffic System Training Net. And then at 9:30 p.m. every night, the same ARL National Traffic System Training Net is on the Irving 146.72 megahertz repeater. Anybody is welcome to check into any of these nets. Please listen before you check in, because quite often there's restrictions on who can check in when. So listen very carefully before you check into any net. Okay, tonight we have a movie for the Afterglow called Trancers. As Tony said, it's about time travel, actually. And I'm going to give away the biggest thing in it. It's got Helen Hunt. And that makes it an interesting movie. Just having Helen Hunt in it makes it very interesting. I think if you look at the movie, you'll agree with me. Tom, K5ICX, do you want to tell us about Trancers? Give us the lowdown. Give us the inside skinny on what's going on with this movie, Tom, N5BB.
Well, thank you, Bill, and this is KE5ICX, and I pride myself in giving the most accurate information on our weekly movies. This one is Trancers from 1984, as you mentioned. Here it is. Jack Death was a retired police trooper. He lived right next door to Rick Deckard, Blade Runner, who was also very noisy, with replicants coming and going all hours of the day and night. Death got the phone call. His old boss wanted him back on the force. There was a serial Amway salesman making the rounds in the neighborhood, and people were getting antsy and getting the guy taken out of circulation. But to do that, Death would have to time travel and prevent Amway from ever existing. That might include using drug-induced time traveling. Things were about to get really wonky, so join us tonight at 10:30 p.m. for the 1984 classic film that nobody knows about, Trancers. I don't know what that means, but that's the name of the movie. And if you think that's not enough, they made, ready for this, 6 sequels to this film from 1984 till 14, with the same old guy as the Trancer, as Death. So that's it, Bill. Back to you, KE5ICX.
So thank you, Tom. For you young'uns, you young people, you hear him mention Amway, and you think, what? What is Amway? Well, the movie was made in 1984. If you were alive and cognizant in 1984, you know what Amway was. Okay. Do we have any other additional check-ins to the net? If so, please come now. This is N5BB Skynet. Okie dokie. Next, normally we have Chaz, KF5GHA, reading about the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events. But Chaz is at a Christmas party. I think it's what it is. It's an event where, oh, I know, it's the Texas Astronomical Society Christmas party, isn't it? Anyway, it's a very important event, so he can't be here. Tom, would you mind reading Chaz's information for us in 5BB?
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Let me quickly see if I can find it. He is at their annual Christmas party. Oh, here it is. I found the information. Here we go. Hold on. The next regular TAS meeting will be held in person and on Zoom Friday, January 26th, 2024, next year, at 7:30 p.m. The speaker will be Ken Sturrock, from Denver Astronomical Society, and he will be talking about the Chamberlain Observatory. Now, I don't think anybody is at the Fairfield public observing site, but each Saturday there is a public observing site for the Texas Astronomical Society. The first Saturday is regularly the Fairfield location. However, I think most of those folks are at the banquet tonight. Second Saturday is Cedarville. That'll be December 9th. Third Saturday will be Frisco on December 16th. The fourth Saturday will be Rockwell on December 23rd. Go to the Texas Astronomical Society website. That is texasastro.org. You can click on the calendar and get information on the club and activities. Also, there is a news tab there as well that will give you updates on the observing parties and whether they are on or off for the evening. Plus, you can always look up in the sky. If it's cloudy, there's probably not going to be an observing session. Back to you, Bill, KE5ICX.
Thank you, Tom. Do we have any questions or comments about anything so far in the net or any late check-ins? This is N5BB, net control of Skynet.
W9 BPU, Sam and Allen.
Hello, Sam. W9 VPU N5BB. Any questions or just checking in?
I'm just checking in. Thought I heard checking around. Never mind. W9 VPU.
No, it was either. I just want to make sure that if you did have questions, I didn't miss them. No, check-ins. I did invite check-ins. Thank you, Sam. I appreciate it. Anybody else want to check in or has any comments? Please come now. Okay. Next is National Space Society. I happen to be the membership director of the North Texas chapter of the National Space Society and the member at large of that group. The North Texas chapter of National Space Society meets on the second Sunday afternoon of each month. We normally meet at Spring Creek Barbecue in Irving, but in December we normally have our holiday party, our Christmas party. So a week from tomorrow, this will be on Sunday, December the 10th. National Space Society meeting will be a Christmas party at my house in Irving. We have catered barbecue meats, so this is not something where you can walk in. But if you would like to attend the party, and if you are not a National Space Society member, there are ways we can get you in. You can contact me. Or if you have any questions about the National Space Society. National Space Society is involved with things that humans do in space. Shoot off rockets, have probes to other planets, land humans on the moon, things of that nature. If you would like to find out more about the National Space Society, you can contact me, or if you want to come to our party, contact me at space@byrom.net. That's SPACE at BYROM.net. We have a website, which is ntx.nss.org. That's NTX, like the abbreviation for North Texas, .NSS, the abbreviation for National Space Society, .org. ntx.nss.org. And we have an active Facebook page and other social media. Just look for National Space Society of North Texas, and you'll be able to find us. Also, there was an event which was not sponsored by the National Space Society, but several of us attended and it was here on Tuesday of this last week, November the 28th in Capel. And John, in fact, K5JDW was there, as well as myself and several other local members of the National Space Society were there. And it was about the Artemis human landing system. The Artemis program is NASA's program for going back to the moon. So Apollo is for us initially sending humans to the moon. Artemis is for us going back again to the moon here in the 21st century. And the human landing system is how we're going to land on the moon. And one of the human landing system, the primary one that's going to be used, is from SpaceX. It's their monster Starship lander. So it will be launched into Earth orbit. It will be refueled in Earth orbit. It will then go to the moon. And there will be, NASA's working on the Lunar Gateway space station that will be put in around the moon. And spacecraft from Earth will be able to dock with the Lunar Gateway. And by the way, there's planned, amateur radio is in the active planning for the Lunar Gateway station. They have an amateur radio set up there of some type. And then landers will be able to leave the Lunar Gateway and go down to the moon's surface. This is in the future. Anyway, so far in the Artemis program, there have been no human launches. There has been one unmanned launched, no humans, and it was a human-rated capsule that went around the moon and came back and landed on the Earth. So this is an interesting program with many big companies involved. There's also a second company involved with a lunar lander, with human landing system. It's a team of people with Blue Origin and many other companies that are bonded together to produce this second lunar lander. So, a lot of things going on with missions to the moon. That's all I've got about National Space Society. Does anybody have any questions about National Space Society or what I just mentioned? Or do we have any other check-ins? This is N5BB, Skynet.
Golf 5, Zulu Mike Golf, Joe in Arlington, checking in.
Very good, Joe. I recognize Joe, KG5ZMG. And I'm sorry I neglected to look over at Echolink and noticed that you had appeared over there. We got you, Joe. Okay. Do we have any other check-ins to Skynet before I continue? This is N5BB, Net Control. Okay, next we have an article from Scientific American magazine, which came out a few days ago, with a very interesting title. A little bait here. NASA may pay $1 billion, that's a billion with a B, to destroy the International Space Station. The International Space Station, which is larger than a football field and weighs almost 450 tons, must eventually fall to Earth. It's a delicate, dangerous process. Let me pull up the article here. This is N5BB, Skynet. For nearly a quarter century, the International Space Station, the ISS, has continuously hosted astronauts, I've got amateurs on the brain, is continuously hosted astronauts in science experiments as an enduring and beloved bastion of humanity in low Earth orbit. Yet despite its success is the space station's days are numbered. In the coming months, NASA will be evaluating commercial proposals for vehicles capable of decommissioning the ISS, that is, of safely dropping it into Earth's atmosphere to burn up. The agency has said it expects to pay nearly $1 billion for this service to avoid relying on multiple Russian vehicles. The brutal ending is scheduled for early next decade, so early 2030s, but is already proving a delicate matter for aerospace engineering and international diplomacy. The ISS is a key symbol of international and civilian cooperation, says Maya Cross, a political scientist at Northeastern University. In terms of civilian cooperation, I think many would describe it as the biggest project ever embarked upon in human history. Although the ISS is chiefly a creation of the U.S. and Russia, and is one of the very few areas of steadfast cooperation between both nations across decades of rocky relations. Its first modules, one from the U.S. and the other one from Russia, reached orbit in late 1998. The space station's first crew, one astronaut and two cosmonauts, took up residence in November of 2000. The ISS has been continuously inhabited ever since, and has far surpassed its original target lifetime of just 15 years. This is N5BB, Skynet. But nothing lasts forever. Although you hate to see it go, and it'll be sad when it's retired, it's really not practical to keep it in orbit indefinitely, says George Neild, president of the company Commercial Space Technologies, and a former member of, NASA's Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel, a long-standing committee that has urged the space agency to develop a clear strategy for the ISS's demise sooner rather than later. That was a long sentence. With a looming problem. The laboratory's doom comes from its location in low Earth orbit, within the tenuous upper reaches of Earth's atmosphere. There, whatever goes up must come down, pulled back to our planet by a steady wash of speed-zapping atmospheric particles, the thin atmosphere at that altitude. Without periodic boosts, as a spacecraft in low Earth orbit loses speed, it loses altitude as well, eventually sinking deep enough to break apart and burn up as it plunges through our planet's atmosphere. Most of the ISS's orbit-maintaining boosts come from a steady supply of Russian Progress cargo vehicles that, once they are docked with the station, periodically fire their engines to counteract the space station's constant sinking. Theoretically, NASA and its collaborators could raise the ISS to an orbit at which it would leave Earth's atmosphere entirely. But lofting so much mass so high would be extremely expensive. And even if the station were to be abandoned in such a graveyard orbit, the ISS would still pose hazards. Because it is so old and unwieldy, its eventual disintegration would be inevitable. It would generate enormous amounts of debris that could damage other satellites. This is N5BB, Skynet. You don't want to leave it in orbit, says Jonathan McDowell, an astrophysicist at the Center for Astrophysics at Harvard and Smithsonian, who also monitors satellites in orbit. It's very nice to think of it as a museum, but it's going to deteriorate and break up. Deconstructing the ISS is also unfeasible, Neil says, because it wasn't designed for disassembly, and any ad hoc attempt to do so would face dire risk from aging components that have spent more than 2 decades exposed to the extreme environment of space. If the space station can't orbit ever outward, then it must burn out in a blaze of glory. There are 2 ways that could happen. There are 2 ways that could happen. Either in a deliberate, destructive descent into the atmosphere, or in what engineers call an uncontrolled deorbit, in which the ISS would plummet to Earth's surface at nature's whim. And while it might be glorious, that latter option is unquestionably dangerous. Excuse me. The ISS is larger than a football field, and its orbit carries it over 90% of Earth's population. To date, the harm to people and property from falling spacecraft debris has been practically non-existent. But as the largest object to ever deorbit, the ISS could easily change that. An uncontrolled re-entry could significantly impact people on the ground, including fatalities, injuries, and significant property damage, Neil says. That would not be a good day. This is N5BB, Skynet. The path down. The safest way to bring the ISS down to Earth, NASA officials say, is to dump it into the sparsely inhabited expanses of the southern Pacific Ocean to reduce the odds of harm. That's tricky because the station's roughly 1.5-hour orbital loop, since it's zipping over more than 250 linear miles of Earth's surface every minute, with a ground track that constantly changes as the world turns. The more time the ISS spends falling through the atmosphere, the more its debris field will spread along that track, increasing the odds that an errant piece will wreak havoc somewhere on the surface. But the station's plunge shouldn't happen too fast. If the ISS were to dive through the atmosphere with too much force, increased air resistance could rip off large pieces, such as the sprawling solar arrays or individual modules, which would make them uncontrolled and unpredictable re-entries of their own. The space station's irregular geometry compounds this issue, increasing the importance of keeping the station in a stable orientation during its atmospheric plunge. If it were to tumble during its descent, the rocket powering the deorbit would no longer point in the right direction, sending the ISS perilously off course. We've all seen this, by the way, with fireworks that go crazy and go off in weird directions. N5BB, Skynet. Add to this the fact that Earth's atmosphere is a remarkably fickle beast. It thins and thickens with the sun's 11-year activity cycle and changes with the passage from day to night and back. When you deorbit a big object like the ISS, it is very, very reliant on what is happening with the atmospheric density, says David Arness, an aerospace engineer at Purdue University. It's basically impossible to predict that with a lot of time. Of course, us ham radio operators know all about the solar things. Just a few days ago, there was a big solar flare, like a CME or something, and there was a very high flux that got to the Earth's atmosphere. I think it made an unstable geomagnetic field, if I remember correctly. So these things happen all the time, and they affect radio propagation. This is N5BB, Skynet. All these factors combine to make the ideal process go something like this. After weeks or months of natural orbital decay that would slowly lower the ISS's altitude, at about 250 miles above Earth, a custom-built vehicle attached to the space station would begin a deorbit burn. The station could then descend about halfway to the planet's surface before encountering destabilizing effects. At around 125 miles in altitude, mission controllers would adjust the ISS's trajectory, tweaking the rocket's burn to reshape the station's roughly circular orbit into an ellipse, with its closest Earthward point, or perigee, perhaps 90 miles above the planet. This would help minimize the amount of time the station would spend in lower, denser levels of the atmosphere during the remainder of its descent. From that 90-mile perigee, Mission Control would command the rocket to fire a final time, pushing the station even farther down to fall over the South Pacific. The whole world will be watching, Cross says, which will raise the stakes sky high. Ha ha. This is N5BB, Skynet. A global event. What will it take to accomplish the feat? Until recently, NASA officials have said that several, perhaps 3, Russian Progress vehicles would work together to deorbit the ISS. But that plan has always been provisional at best because of the difficulty of coordinating the individual deorbiters. Even when things are going well, it would be a challenge, Neil says. It really was going to require several Progress vehicles to be built, launched, connected, and do their thing in a very short period of time. And at least when it comes to the U.S.-Russia ISS partnership, things are not going well. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has brought the former's relations with the U.S. to their lowest point since the Cold War, straining the ISS collaboration. Russia has also suggested that it wants to leave the ISS partnership before NASA is ready, and has made no assurances that it would still offer Progress vehicles for a controlled deorbit in that scenario. NASA did not immediately provide a comment for this story. Roscosmos did not respond to a request for comment either. Meanwhile, a string of disconcerting incidents arising from Russian-built hardware has eroded faith in that nation's spaceflight capabilities. In 2018, a Russian Soyuz spacecraft that was docked to the station was found to be leaking air through a small hole that Russian officials say may have been deliberately drilled in an act of sabotage. Later that year, a Russian flight to carry 2 astronauts to the station aborted safely after a failed launch. In 2021, a science module originally meant to launch in 2007 finally arrived. But since that time, it has been plagued by issues, including a misfiring thruster that briefly sent the station into a disturbing somersault. In the past year, Russian cooling systems aboard the ISS sprang 3 separate leaks that vented toxic ammonia into space. And in August, the nation's first lunar mission in nearly half a century, that's Russia's first lunar mission in nearly half a century, suffered a humiliating crash into the moon. That was an unmanned probe going to the moon, and it crashed. Very humiliating. All this makes an American deorbit vehicle increasingly desirable for NASA and the nation it serves, despite the hefty price tag. If we have this in our pocket, that reduces Russia's bargaining power by a lot, McDowell says. This is N5BB, Skynet. But if NASA wants a single deorbit vehicle with a design based on the current global space fleet, McDowell adds, it doesn't have many options. The things that seem obvious when you start thinking about it, they just don't have the oomph to do this big final burn in a short time, McDowell says. The closest existing technology, he thinks, Orion capsule on a milestone trip around the moon last fall, and is scheduled to help land humans on the lunar surface later this decade. Everything else, he says, is either far too weak are too forceful, or simply unable to carry enough fuel for the task. Hence, NASA's solicitation of commercial proposals for a new custom-built deorbit vehicle. This is N5BB, Skynet. We're getting near the end now. Whether NASA opts for something new or an existing vehicle adapted for the task, the decision will send ripples beyond U.S.-Russian relations to influence the many other international relationships that underpin the ISS. The end of the space station is just as much a shared responsibility as its construction and maintenance has been. But NASA's public documents aren't clear about whether the Canadian, Japanese, European, or Russian space agencies have signed on to the U.S.-led, commercially executed plan. The mega project's looming end also paves the way for a different set of international a different set of international conversations, ones about future partnerships in space. NASA is already building bilateral partnerships with countries interested in lunar explorations through the Artemis Accords. Although Russia is not among them, China, long banned from ISS participation by U.S. federal law, has now become a powerhouse in space with its own orbital laboratory, as well as robotic lunar and Mars missions. Whether demise of the ISS will lead to a U.S.-China detent is anybody's guess. What's certain, says Cross, the political scientist, is that any and all future international partnerships will not replicate the ISS. They won't replicate the ISS, which is likely to remain a singular shining achievement. The landscape of countries involved in space is starting to look quite different than it was when Russia and the U.S. started cooperating on the ISS, she said, adding that she hopes these partnerships will be well established before the space station's dramatic end. Whether the ISS does at last return to Earth, whenever the ISS does at last return to Earth, its fall will be one of the most bittersweet milestones in spaceflight's long and illustrious history. It's not a lot of times in history in which we have the opportunity of doing a maneuver like this, Arnoff says. They're going to be really, really nervous the day that they have to do this. End of article, published recently in Scientific American online. The author was Megan Bartels, Bartels. Do we have any additional check-ins to Skynet or any questions or comments? This is N5BB, Net Control for Skynet.
Kilo, Golf, 5, Uniform, Foxtrot, Romeo, Jacob in Dallas, late check-in, no traffic.
And I recognize Jacob, KG5UFR. Thank you, Jacob. Do we have any other check-ins? Okay. Next is Was Up. And I believe Tom is going to read that also. Tom, are you up for it? Was Up, Tom? KE5ICX and 5BB, Skynet.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Yeah, I'll do exactly that. Chaz did submit his article, but he is at the banquet this evening, so he will not be able to read it. So forgive me for the puns that he has deposited upon us. You can watch the slideshow that's here. We have this with What's Up and what's sky this week, and then also the constellation of the week, which is Andromeda, which I'll be back to here in just a little bit. This is all available on the live feed if you want to go to it. It's at w5fc.org, or just listen along and imagine. So here we go. This is from Chaz's words. So this is Chaz. No, this is Tom. We call this segment of Skynet Was Up because it's about what's going on astronomically over the next couple of weeks. The moon was full on November 27th, so the current phase of the moon is the waning gibbous. The moon is at third quarter on December 4th. Also on the 4th, the moon is at apogee, which is the point in the moon's orbit that is farthest from the Earth at a distance of 404,346 kilometers. New moon is on December 12th, and on December 16th, the moon is at perigee, which is the point in the moon's orbit that is closest to the Earth at a distance of 367,901 kilometers. On December 2nd, the moon is in conjunction with the star cluster M44, also known as the Beehive Cluster. A pair of binoculars will make it easy to see both. On December 8th through 9th, the monoceratid meteor shower peaks. This meteor shower can have around half a dozen meteors per hour just before dawn. Also on the same night, the Sigma Hydrads meteor shower peaks. This meteor shower can have around half a dozen meteors per hour just before dawn. And you can get more information from the International Meteor Association and the American Meteor Society by going to their website, amsmeteors.org. Let's see, next up is on December 9th, the moon and Venus will be in conjunction in the east to southeastern morning skies. Bright star Spica will be close and just above the moon and Venus. Oh, more meteor showers on December 13th and 14th, or overnight. The Geminid meteor shower peaks. This shower can have up to 150 meteors per hour just before dawn. It's also the most consistent meteor shower over the year. And when the nights of 15th and 16th of December, the Berenices meteor shower with about a half dozen meteors per hour. You can also get more information from you-know-who, the American Meteor Society. Let's see, on December 17th, the moon and Saturn are in conjunction in the southwestern evening sky. Then on December 18th, the planet Venus, and I can never say this, Janubi. I know astronomers and amateur astronomers can just slip that one out easily, but I haven't practiced. It will be in conjunction with the east-southeastern morning sky. And just as you say, Janubi is the star, which is a star in the constellation of Libra. Later that same day, on the evening of December 18th, there is a conjunction with the Moon, Saturn, and Neptune. You'll be able to see you need a good star map and a telescope to observe the planet Neptune. On December 19th through 20th, the Leonid-Minorids meteor shower peaks. This one can have around a half dozen meteors per hour just before dawn. Let's see, more. Next comes and our weekly reminder that we have another solar eclipse coming up in the next 6 months. Solar eclipse is when the moon is between the Earth and the Sun, and for a few lucky people on Earth, blocks some or all of the Sun from view. On April 8, 2024, is a local solar eclipse for us in North Texas. From Brookhaven campus, the Sun will be completely blocked out for around 3 minutes and 20 seconds between 1:41 and 1:44 p.m. During that time, called totality, you'll be able to see stars in the sky just like it were evening twilight. The next total solar eclipse visible from North Texas will be July 9th, 2317, which I think I'll be busy that day. So the total eclipse is a big deal since it only happens about once every 300 years in North Texas. Now, I will tell you this, Bill, your net control this evening, and I and a couple other people went up to the total solar eclipse that could be seen in Kansas. I'd never been to one of those. I tell you, there is nothing like it. So even if it's overcast, you will have during clear skies. Hopefully we'll have that. Don't go out of town and forget finding hotels. It's just not possible anymore. Let's see here. Next up is, there's no TAS meeting in December. That would be tonight because of the awards banquet. Well, actually, they meet on Fridays, but the banquet is tonight. The next TAS Club meeting will be on Friday, the January 26th of 2024, and the meeting will be held at 7:30 p.m. at the University of Texas, and will also be held on Zoom. Featured speaker will be Ken Sturrock from the Denver Astronomical Society, talking about the Chamberlain Observatory. Saturday night public observing sessions continue, and Skynet was picked on Saturday night so that there was an opportunity for live reports of TAS public observing sessions. So because of the annual banquet, there is nothing tonight, and I gave the other times when it is the nights are alternating. We have Fairview on the first Saturday. Next week will be Cedarville. Third week will be Frisco, and the fourth week will be Rockwall. You can check the TAS website, texasastro.org, for up-to-date information and details about the meetings and observing sessions. Now he has here, do you have any questions? I'm not sure I can answer any questions that Chaz can, but there may be somebody here that's already checked in that might be able to. You never know. Does anybody have any questions about anything I've offered this evening or general astronomy? Please come now.
WA5RFG.
WA5RFG, Roland, go ahead.
I plan to view the eclipse and general information. The center line, which will give you the longest period of totality, is along a line in Terrell. So if you head east about 30 miles or so over to Terrell and all in that area, that will give you the best view. That's also out in the country, so there's county roads and stuff that you can get on and have a good view. WA5RFG.
Very good information. Now, if you do go out on country roads, this is also something we experience, is it's just like in those apocalyptic movies where you see people leaving town because of the giant mother spaceship that is about to destroy the city. It's going to be congested in all directions. So plan on spending a few hours in traffic, going nowhere, doing nothing. You may also want to take any sanitary aids and food with you as well, because you will be stuck for quite a while. Otherwise, just stay where you are, and you will be able to see the total eclipse right here in Dallas. Maybe not for as long, but it will be definitely worth your time. So I'll go ahead and conclude this. So as the moon wanes into the night, so do these words from this segment of Skynet. As Chaz always says, stay safe, keep well, pray for a world that's the only one where the humans live, although Elon Musk wants to change that. Until next week, keep looking up so you know what's up. But don't worry, I'll be back with Chaz's Constellation of the Week in a little bit. This is KE5ICX, back to net control.
Very good there, Tom. This is N5BB. Skynet. And I've just looked it up. The total eclipse will be on April the 8th, 2024. I can't remember what day of the week that is. But the maximum eclipse is going to be at 1:17 p.m. Maximum eclipse It'll be about 1:17 p.m. Okay, do we have any questions, comments, or additional check-ins? To the net, this is N5BB, Skynet. Okay, next it's time for Brenda, WB50ZL. Earlier I mentioned the Artemis program going to the moon and the fact that we'd already sent up an unmanned vehicle. That was a year ago, and I think Brenda's going to start off talking about that. Go ahead, Brenda, WB50ZL and 5BB.
Thank you. This is Whiskey Bravo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima. Name is Brenda, and the eclipse on April 8th is on a Monday, so go ahead and put in your bid for a day off, everybody. I've already mentioned it to my boss. Okay, I'm doing Kelly's report tonight. She submitted all this, and I'm just going to read it because she is also at, I think, at the banquet. So, here goes. The NASA report for December 2nd. Artemis 1, after departing distant retrograde orbit the afternoon on Thursday, December 1st, Orion completed a planned trajectory correction burn to fine-tune its course toward the moon. The 5-second burn occurred at 9:54 p.m. CST Thursday and changed the spacecraft's velocity by about 0.3 miles per hour, or less than half a foot per second. On December 2nd, teams collected additional images with Orion's optical navigation camera and downlinked a wide variety of data files to the ground, including data from the Hybrid Electronic Radiation Assessor, or HERA. The radiation detector measures charged particles that pass through its sensors. Measurements from HERA and several other radiation-related sensors and experiments aboard Artemis 1 will help NASA better understand the space radiation environment future crews will experience and develop effective protections. On crewed missions, HERA will be part of the spacecraft's caution and warning system and will sound a warning in the case of a solar energetic particle event, notifying the crew to take shelter. NASA is also testing a similar HERA unit aboard the International Space Station. Orion carries other experiments to gather data on radiation, including several radiation area monitors about the size of a matchbox that record the total radiation dose during the mission. Dosimeters provided by ESA mounted inside the cabin to collect radiation data with timestamps to allow scientists to assess dose rates during various mission phases, and 3 powerful passengers collecting additional information on what crews will experience during future missions. For space biology investigations, collectively called Biology Experiment 1, are examining the impact of deep space radiation on seeds, fungi, yeast, and algae. Orion re-enters the lunar sphere of influence today, Saturday, December 3rd, making the moon... Okay, this is December 2nd today. I guess that's a typo. Making the moon the main gravitational force acting on the spacecraft. It will exit the lunar sphere of influence for a final time on Tuesday, December 6th, one day after its return, powered flyby. Live coverage of Orion's return flyby of the moon on Monday, December 5th, as well as its return to Earth on Sunday, December 11th. So, space history this week. November 28th, 1659, Dutch mathematician and astronomer Christian Huygens saw a dark region on Mars, Sirius Major, the first Martian surface feature spotted from Earth. Sirius Major is a volcanic plain on Mars. Huygens observed it through his telescope and made a drawing of it. 1963, just 6 days after President John F. Kennedy's assassination, President Lyndon B. Johnson announced that NASA's Launch Operations Center would be renamed to John F. Kennedy Space Center in honor of the late president. This center on Merritt Island, Florida, has served as the launch place for some of NASA's most defining flights, including the Skylab Orbital Workshop, Apollo 11, all of the shuttle launches, and most recently, the Artemis 1 launch. November 29th, 1961, astronaut John Glenn was selected to be the first American to sit into Earth orbit. Scott Carpenter was named as the backup. A public announcement wasn't made until early December. Glenn would launch in the Friendship 7 capsule just a few months later, on February 20th, 1962. It was on this Mercury Atlas 6 mission, when the automatic system in his craft malfunctioned, that Glenn's skills as a pilot would be truly tested. Glenn's ability to successfully maneuver his capsule through its second and third orbits was a true testament of his skill and demeanor. Glenn went on to be a four-term senator for Ohio and became the oldest person to fly in space when he launched on STS-95 in 1998. December 2nd. It is a noteworthy day in the history of NASA Space Shuttle launches. 4 shuttle launches happened on December 2nd, more than any other day in the calendar year. In 1988, STS-27 Atlantis launched on a Department of Defense DoD mission. In 1990, STS-35 Columbia launched with the Astro 1 Observatory. In 1990, STS-53 Discovery launched on another DoD mission. And finally, in 1993, STS-61 Endeavour launched on the first Hubble Space Telescope servicing mission. Did you notice that each of the December 2nd launches was of a different shuttle? The only shuttle to not stay was Challenger. And in 1993, speaking of STS-61, Space Shuttle Endeavour launched for the first of 5 servicing missions to the Hubble Space Telescope. On this mission, crew members successfully corrected a flaw in the Hubble's primary mirror by installing the Corrective Optics Space Telescope Axial Replacement, that's COSTAR. COSTAR countered the effects of the flawed mirror, which had been ground too flat along its outer edge by 2.2 microns. This 1/50th of the thickness of a human hair. COSTAR redirected light reflected from the outer edge of the mirror just enough that it would line up exactly with the light reflected elsewhere, everywhere else on the mirror as intended. Over the course of their 10-day mission, the crew aboard STS-61 successfully installed COSTAR and replaced a number of other components that facilitated a flood of precision science data. Birthdays. November 27th, 1952, James Weatherby flew an STS-32, 52, 62, 86, 102, and 113. November 29th, Kenneth Cameron. Missions were STS-37, 56, and 74. December 1st, Terry Virts, STS-130, Expedition 4243. And that is all we have here. Back to net. This is WB50ZL.
Okay, very good, Brenda. By the way, your smoke detector battery is getting low. We can hear it over the radio, beeping occasionally. Okay, by the way, of course, the reason that the dates appeared off one day for the Artemis 1 mission was last year. So that's the reason those dates were last year's dates. That mission was completed, and when it says things going on in the future, well, that was from the place when it was written a year ago. Okay, do we have any other check-ins to Skynet? If so, please come now. This is N5BB, Net Control. Okay, Warning, Will Robinson. Warning, Will Robinson. Jokes are on the way. Tom, would you read Miss Carolyn's constellation of the week? This is in Phi BB.
Yeah, I will do exactly that. Again, this is Chaz, K5JJ, who wrote this all up, and this is his typical segment. But I'm going to read it this evening. I hope they're having fun with all his puns he's doing probably at the party as we speak. So here we go. This is Miss Constellation. This is Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week, which is named in honor of our silent key, Carolyn, KC50ZD. She contributed to Skynet each week, almost from its very beginning in 2012 until May of 2019, with a detailed look at one particular constellation each week, since there are 52 easily visible constellations seen in Texas throughout the year out of the 88 total constellations. So Miss Carolyn covered the entire sky as seen over North Texas in a year. In her honor, we have continued that tradition of a constellation per week and naming this segment after her. Miss Carolyn's constellation of this week is Andromeda, the Princess. Here we go. I have told the myth behind Cassiopeia in the past. Cassiopeia, or Cassiopeia, is the queen. Cepheus is the king. Andromeda is the princess. Perseus is the hero. And Pegasus is his flying horse. And Cetus is the sea monster. All these characters are constellations in the sky. All right, you've been warned. Here it comes. His jokes of the week. It's groaning time. Let's start with the first one. How does a princess screw in a light bulb? She holds the bulb in the socket and waits for the world to revolve around her. Yuck, yuck. Why didn't the Disney princess Elsa go to the doctor when she got sick? Think about that one. Because the cold never bothered her anyway. Who is the hottest Disney princess? Are you ready? You've got all sorts of images in your mind. This is Chaz we're talking about. For me, it has to be Cinderella. My daughter is angry with me for incorrectly quoting The Princess Bride. Unbelievable. Coronavirus on purpose. Oh, this is bad, because she went to Wuhan. I'll explain it later. Princess Elsa will never catch the coronavirus. She is the master of self-isolation. And we had a moment of silence for those terrible jokes. Okay, back to the fun here. Let me see if I can pronounce all these things. Almach is Gamma Andromedae. David Hutchinson writes in the TAS newsletter that this star is a beautiful double star with a good color contrast and a yellow primary and green-blue secondary reminiscent of Alberio in Cygnus. Next, we have M31 is the Andromeda Galaxy, one of the finest deep sky showpiece objects in the heavens. It's bright enough to be visible to the naked eye from a dark sky site. But even in light-polluted skies, it can be seen in binoculars. The M31 is best viewed at lower powers. If you're trying to take in the whole galaxy at once, higher power can be useful for viewing detail in this galaxy, and M31 spans over 3 degrees in the sky, so it's big enough that there is a lot of detail to be seen. Recent estimates put M31 at 2.65 million light years from Earth, making it the farthest object visible to the naked eye by most people. So the sharp-eyed folks can see M33 in triangulum under clear dark skies, which is a bit further away than M31, but for most people, M31 is as far as they can see. M32 is one of the companion galaxies to M31. It is an elliptical galaxy that appears spherical in shape. At lower powers, especially in smaller telescopes, it shows little detail, so it is almost indistinguishable from a star. In fact, there's a star of similar brightness very close by, so you may have to look at a photograph of M31 and 32 to be able to tell which object is the star and which is the galaxy. M110 is another companion galaxy to M31. It appears further out from the nucleus of M31 than M32 does, and M32 and M110 are analogous to the Magellanic Clouds of the Milky Way, but whereas the Magellanic Clouds are irregular galaxies, M32 and 110 are elliptical. Also, like the Milky Way, the Andromeda Galaxy has other smaller companion galaxies further out. M32 and M110 can be observed with smaller aperture instruments from a dark sky site. In the early 2000s, as an experiment, Dennis Harwell pointed a 50 millimeter or 2-inch refractor at M31 under dark skies. Using a long focal length eyepiece, which provided a magnification of about 11 times or 12 times, he could see the three galaxies, M31, 32, and 110, using only 2 inches of aperture. Next up is G1, or Challenge Object. This is a globular cluster in M31, and it orbits around M31 at a distance of 100,000 light years from the galaxy's nucleus. It is estimated to have about 300,000 stars. If we remove this object from M31 and place it next to the Omega Centauri in the sky, it would be brighter than Omega. And finally, there are more Astronomical League observing programs in the constellation at Andromeda the Princess. I've just given you a sampling of some of those objects. The Astronomical League has, at last count, 77 different observing programs, most of which can have around 100 objects. If you observe just 10 objects in an observing program each month, then you can earn an observing certificate and a pin in about a year. And that is Miss Carolyn's constellation of the week in Andromeda the Princess. Chaz wants to thank his friends, Dave Hutchinson and Dennis Harwell, who, by the way, are sitting next to him at the banquet. I am positive because those guys are inseparable, for their research and words on deep sky objects, and I've used, borrowed, or stealed from every Skynet. I also at times use the website constellationguide.com for information. Next week, we will take a look at Aries the Ram and Triangulum the Triangle. And that's it. This is from KF5JJ, Chaz's report for this week.
Thank you, Tom. This is N5BB, Skynet. Because of the time, I'm going to skip down and go to Brenda, WB50ZL. Brenda, can you tell us about recent astronomical discoveries? N5BB.
Certainly. This is WB50ZL, and the title of this article is Meteorites Likely Source of Nitrogen for Early Earth. Micrometeorites originating from icy celestial bodies in the outer solar system may be responsible for transporting nitrogen to the near-Earth region in the early days of our solar system. That discovery was published today in Nature Astronomy by an international team of researchers, including University of Hawaii at Manoa scientists led by Kyoto University. Nitrogen compounds, such as ammonia salts, are abundant in material born in regions far from the sun, but evidence of their transport to Earth's orbital region had been poorly understood. Our recent findings suggest the possibility that a greater amount of nitrogen compounds than previously recognized was transported near Earth, potentially serving as building blocks for life on our planet, says Hope Ishii, study co-author and affiliate faculty at the Hawaii Institute of Geophysics and Planetology, at the UH Manoa School of Ocean and Earth Science Technology. That's SOEST. Like all asteroids, Ryugu is a small rocky object that orbits the Sun. The Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency's Hayabusa 2 spacecraft explored Ryugu and brought material from its surface back to Earth in 2020. This intriguing asteroid is rich in carbon and has undergone significant space weathering caused by micrometeorite collisions and exposure to charged ions streaming from the Sun. In this study, the scientists aimed to discover clues about the materials arriving near Earth's orbit, where Ryugu is currently located. By examining the evidence of space weathering in Ryugu samples using an electron microscope, they found that the surface of the Ryugu samples are covered with tiny minerals composed of iron and nitrogen, or iron nitride, Fe4N. We proposed that tiny meteorites called micrometeorites contain ammonia compounds that were delivered from icy celestial bodies and collided with Ryugu, said Teru Matsumoto, lead author of the study and assistant professor of Kyoto University. The micrometeorite collisions trigger chemical reactions on magnetite and lead to the formation of the iron nitride. The iron nitride was observed on the surface of magnetite, which consists of iron and oxygen atoms. When magnetite is exposed to the space environment, oxygen atoms are lost from the surface by the irradiation of hydrogen ions from the sun, or solar wind, and by heating through micrometeorite surface of the magnetite, which readily reacts with ammonia, creating ideal conditions for synthesis of iron nitride. This article was from ScienceDaily.com. Back to net, WB5OZL.
Very good, Brenda. Do we have any comments, questions, or check-ins? This is N5BB, Skynet.
This is Alpha Golf, Niner, Sierra Golf, checking only.
Station's very weak. Is that AG9SG, Antonio? Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Sierra Golf, Alpha Golf, Niner, Sierra Golf.
Very good, Antonio. I thought I recognized your voice. You're pretty weak tonight, but I got it. Okay, any other check-ins? Looking here at the space launches of the week, today or tomorrow, late today, Eastern Time. In fact, right now. There's supposed to be a Falcon right now. It's 10 to 11 o'clock Central Time. A Falcon 9 was supposed to launch from SLC-40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. Another 23 second-generation Starlink mini internet satellites. And let's see, what else? On December the 10th, well, that's already over a week from today. That's going to be Sunday of next week. There's supposed to be a Falcon Heavy launching the U.S. Space Force 52 mission. An experimental X-37B. Oh, we remember that. Remember? The X-37B looks like a little mini space shuttle. A Falcon Heavy is going to launch it from Kennedy Space Center. It'll be the 7th launch of this spacecraft on a mission known as OTV-7. The first one launching with a Falcon Heavy. It was delayed from October 2021 and second quarter 2022, and et cetera, et cetera. Been delayed many times. So that'll be interesting to see if that launches. The first launch of the X-37B from on a Falcon Heavy. And don't ask us what the mission is going to do. It's a secret military mission. What else do I have? On December the 13th, at 11 days from today, an Electron launch, the Moon God Awakens. What a neat name. The Moon Gods Awaken is the nickname. This is by Rocket Lab, an Electron rocket. Rocket Lab has the neatest names for their things. They're from New Zealand. And this launch is going to be in New Zealand. They launch from New Zealand and the west coast of the U.S. And this is going to be a QPS SAR-5 satellite for the Japan-based Earth imaging company, the Institute for Kyushu Pioneers of Space. The 42nd flight of the Electron rocket, and the first since a launch failure in September. It did have a failure in September, but that's been a pretty successful rocket for Rocket Lab. And let's see, what else is interesting? November the 9th, in a week, December the 9th in a week is Avzon 3. It'll be a Falcon 9 SpaceX launch, a much-delayed small geostationary satellite for the Swedish broadband internet provider Ovzon, O-V-Z-O-N. It was originally scheduled to launch on Ariane 5 and was moved to a Falcon 9 due to delaying manufacturing, I guess, of the Ariane 5. Okay. One more.
I'm completely operational.
On December the 24th, Christmas Eve,
Afterglow movie
there's
net.
going to be a Vulcan Centaur launching Peregrine. Let's see, a United Launch Alliance Vulcan Centaur rocket will launch on its inaugural flight with the Peregrine commercial lunar lander for Astrobiotic. The Peregrine robotic lander will carry multiple experiments, scientific experiments, and tech demo payloads for NASA and other customers. The mission will also launch 2 prototype satellites for Amazon's Kuiper broadband constellation. The Vulcan Centaur rocket will fly in the VC-2S configuration, etc., etc. There's 2 RL-10 engines on the Centaur upper stage. So this is the inaugural flight of the Vulcan Centaur rocket, as I understand. It's been delayed from mid-2022 and late 2022 and first quarter 2023 and May the 4th. So now maybe they'll launch that. So, again, exciting things going to the moon. That's all we've got. Are there any other check-ins or comments or questions before we close the net? This is N5BB, Skynet. Okay, tonight, adding Antonio, we had 20 check-ins. I want to thank everybody who participated this evening. We hope you join us next week and every Saturday night at 9 p.m. to discuss astronomy, space, and space exploration. On this net, the sky is never the limit. We're always looking for net control stations for this and other Dallas Amateur Radio Club nets. If you're interested, send an email to nets@w5fc.org. You can follow topics about this net, astronomy in general, Facebook and Twitter. Facebook and X. There is no longer a Twitter. Needs to be corrected, Tom. As well as our audio and video streams, video archives, and other useful internet resources by going to w5fc.org. Until next Saturday night, this is N5BB Bill. I'm closing the net at 10:32 p.m. local time. Returning the repeater to normal amateur use for a couple of minutes, but we're getting ready to do the Afterglow net. Tom, well, anyway, do you want to tell us when the Afterglow Net will start? Like 5 minutes? What do you think, Tom? By the way, the Afterglow movie this evening is Tracers, which is a 1982 movie that stars Helen Hunt and some other people. Go ahead, Tom, K5ICX and 5BB.
Oh, yeah, you're correct, Bill. We'll start in 5 minutes, 5 minutes. So everybody gets to go powder their noses, refresh their drinks, come on back, sit around the radio. It means, but that's the name of the movie. So come on back in 5. This is KE5ICX. Okay, folks, it's time for the Afterglow Movie Net. It's opportunity to go and watch a fine motion picture selected for the group, and then you get to discuss it on Saturday evening. So we try and tell you Sunday before, pretty close to that, and then we discuss it on the following Saturday evening. Some of us even go and watch the film and chat back and forth on Friday evening at 8 o'clock. If you want to be one of those people, let me know, and we'll make sure that you're aware of when and where we meet. So, here we go. Tonight's movie that we'll be discussing is the fine film called Trancers from 1984. It's a science fiction film. It's directed by Charles Band, starring Tim Thomerson, Helen Hunt, yes, that Helen Hunt, Art LaFleur. It's the first of the Trancer series. Yes, there was a series. Thomerson plays Jack Death, a Philip Marlowe-esque police detective, or more like Peter Gunn, really, from the 23rd century who travels to the 1980s to bring his old nemesis to justice. The film portrays a unique method of time travel. People can travel back in time by injecting themselves with a drug that allows them to take over the body of an ancestor. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me either. So here's the plot. In case you didn't see the film, it's only an hour and 17 minutes long, an hour and 16 minutes actually. Very quick film. Jack Death is retired police trooper in the 23rd century who's been called back into service to assist in hunting down Martin Whistler, a criminal mastermind who uses psychic powers to turn people into mindless trancers and carry out his orders. Death can identify a tranced individual by scanning them with a special bracelet. All trancers appear as normal humans at first, but once triggered, they become savage killers with twisted features and bad facial skin. Before he can be caught, Whistler escapes back in time using a drug-induced time-traveling technique. His consciousness travels down his ancestors' bloodline. It arrives in 1985 and takes over the body of a Los Angeles police detective named Weisling. Once Death discovers that Whistler has done, he destroys Whistler's body, effectively leaving him trapped in the past with no vessel to return to, and chases after him through time the same way. Death ends up in the body of one of his ancestors, a journalist named Phil Deathson. And with the help of Phil's date from the night before, a punk rock girl named Lena, Death goes after Whistler, who has begun to trance other victims. Whistler plots to eliminate the future governing council members of Angel City, the future name of Los Angeles, who are being systematically wiped out of existence by Whistler's murder spree of their ancestor. Death arrives too late to prevent most of the murders and can only safeguard Hap Ashby, a washed-up former pro baseball player who is the ancestor of the last surviving council member, Chairman Ash. Death is given some high-tech equipment, which is sent to him in the past, his sidearm, which contains 2 hidden vials of time drugs to send him and Whistler back to the future, and a long-second wristwatch, which temporarily slows time, stretching 1 second to 10. I think that's just a cheap Timex, if I remember correctly. The watch has only enough power for one use, but he later receives another watch. During the end fight with Whistler, one of the drug vials in Jack's gun breaks, leaving only 1 vial to get home. Jack is forced to make a choice: kill the innocent Weisling, who is possessed by the evil Whistler, or use the vial to send Whistler back to 2247, which would strand Jack in the present. Jack chooses to eject Weisling with the vial, saving the lieutenant's life, but condemning Whistler to an eternity without a body to return to. Jack decides to remain with Lena in 1985, although observing him from the shadows is McNulty, his boss from the future, who has traveled down his own ancestral line, ending up in the body of a young girl. And that's a hilarious scene. You would love it. Right there. In 2021, screenwriter Danny Bilson appeared on the coast of Hollywood to discuss his and Paul DeMille's work at Empire Pictures with a focus on the making of Trancers. And actually, reception-wise, it was rather popular. So who knew, right? Okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to take check-in, and then after the check-ins, and with check-ins, I'll ask if you've seen the film. It is not a requirement that you've seen the film. You can insult the film in any way, or assault the film in any way that you want to, even if you haven't seen it, because you'll probably be right. Although this one turned out to be a not terrible film, and I think that's how this will play out. We will discuss the plot first round. Second round, we will discuss the characterizations, of which there are several. And then finally, we'll talk about the special effects, of which there are none. So, let us begin. I will take check-in, starting with your call sign, phonetically please, your name, and did you see tonight's movie, Trancers from 1984. Let us begin, shall we?
November Tango 5, Tango Mike, Tony in Dallas. Yes, I have mostly seen the movie.
November 5, Bravo, Bravo, Bill in Irving. Yes, I saw the whole thing.
Whiskey 5, bacon, lettuce, tomato, Bill, W5BLT, Garland, yes.
WB5OZL, Brenda in Dallas. Yes, I saw this movie.
November Victor 5, Foxtrot, Virginia in Fort Worth. Yes, I saw the movie.
Kilo Bravo 9, Sierra Oscar Kilo, Sean in Fort Worth. Yes, I've seen this movie.
November James, Oklahoma. I did not see the movie.
Alpha 5 Alpha Hotel, Robert Richardson. I did not see the movie.
All right, just catching up on my paperwork here, but let me go ahead and get everybody checked in. We'll start with Tony, NT5TM. Tony in Dallas, yes, he saw the movie. N5BB, Bill in Irving, yes, he saw the movie. W5BLT, that's Bill, bacon, lettuce, and tomato. In Garland, he saw the movie. WB5OZL, Brenda in Dallas, yep, she saw it. NV5F in Virginia, Fort Worth, yes, she saw the film. KB9SOK, Sean in Fort Worth, yes, he saw the film. And somebody new, KG5PMN, although I recognize that call from somewhere. That's James in Oklahoma. No, he did not see the film. That's okay. You were spared. It was merciful. And then AA5AH, Robert in Richardson. No, he did not see the film. All right, I will reserve calling on you too, but I will come back to you at some point and ask you, what do you think if this is a film you would like to see? So pay attention to everyone's review and comments, because you will be asked your opinion of whether you would want to see this film or not. I'll go in order. Tony is always number one. He's always anxious to tell us about the film that he has seen or not seen. In this case, he has seen. So we will start with Tony and the plot, NT5TM. What did you think about Trancer and the plot? Oh, by the way, the film was also released as the highly imaginative title, Future Cop. So Tony, go ahead. Lead us off. What did you love about this film from KE5 ICX?
Well, really, I just go first because someone has to break the ice, and I want to provide a springboard or a diving board or a platform, wherever you like to launch yourself from. I hope you'll do better than I do here. So, kind of like last week, actually. Last week, I really wanted to like the movie. I was frustrated by its extremely low production values. I really wanted to like the movie. I thought it kept us talking. We could tell the characters apart. I thought it had a lot of potential. I just wish that they had a better casting director and just more money and more experience. Oh boy, this movie. I've seen most of it. I'm about 14 minutes from the end, apparently. I have enjoyed it. It has kept me engaged. I could tell the characters apart. I thought the costuming and appearances were interesting. Oh, wait, that's not all plot. I thought the plot was relatively original. I mean, when we think about drugs in movies, we think about people getting sedated or knocked out or turned into zombies. We don't think you magically become one of your ancestors. I actually thought that was a pretty cool premise. So I have been listening and watching. I've been engaged. I have a lot to pick on in the third round. Oh, my goodness. But, you know, I thought the plot was interesting. I have been following it, and it could be a lot worse. So, again, it's flawed and of its age, but, hey, I'm watching and I'm paying attention, so it's kind of like last week. I wish it were better, but I couldn't stand to stop watching. NT5TM.
Thank you, Tony. Probably another classic train wreck. You can't look away. You want to know how it ends? Well, just you sneak in there. You can see the last few minutes while we go down this round. Next up is Bill, N5BB, our net control for Skynet this evening. Bill, you saw the film. What did you think about the plot from KE5ICX?
Thank you, Tom. This is N5BB. Well, like Tony, I kind of liked the movie. I thought it moved reasonably well. I didn't think it, like, got stuck somewhere. It I didn't get bored anywhere. And I wanted to see the next section to see what happened. It wasn't obvious necessarily what the final resolution was going to be until the very end. The plot idea was reasonably interesting. It was vaguely similar to the Terminator in that you have somebody going back to try to get rid of somebody or change something in the past. Let's put it that way. And so I thought that was kind of interesting, that things are going real bad in the future, and they needed to fix what went on. It was kind of interesting. They were going back to their ancestors. And one little plot thing, which I don't know if everybody else noticed, but I noticed it, he made the comment kind of really quickly by that Jack Death was going to that his ancestor was going to die, and the person he was going to kill was Lena. So what I took from that part of the plot, spoiler, was that Jack Death was going to have a child with Lena, and that would be his progeny. Eventually, that's the ancestor of Jack Death. So it's one of these time travel things where there's a loop where he goes back to be his own great-great-great-great-grandfather or something. Now, I'm not sure, but that's what I thought I heard from the little snippets of the dialogue. But I thought it was reasonable for a 1984 science fiction movie, the plot and all that kind of stuff, and it was enjoyable. More later, N5BB.
Very good, thank you, Bill. And I think you're right. I do vaguely remember something to that effect. Well, maybe others picked up on it. W5BLT, Bill, over in Garland. You saw the film. What did you think of the plot from KE5ICX?
Well, I think we've seen kind of plots similar to this, going back through time to fix things.
I liked the movie. I had trouble with the time travel, but I usually always have trouble with the time travel movies because it's not well explained. I mean, I obviously somehow going back in time and inhabiting your ancestors' bodies is kind of strange, and I didn't really understand that, how that was done, I guess with drugs, but still. So that was kind of interesting. You know, always in time travel, you have to suspend reality and just enjoy it and go with it. And it moved well. I don't think it should have been any longer than what it was. And so I was glad it wasn't a 2-hour movie. I am going to try to watch the second one just to see what happens in it. I've always liked Helen Hunt as an actress. You know, back in that time period, and the characters here. So I'll probably give the second one, but I don't know that I'm going to watch all 6. Anyway, that's all I got. W5BLT. Back to you, Tom.
Okie dokie. Thank you, Bill. Next up is Brenda, WB50ZL. Brenda, you saw the film. What did you think of the plot?
This is WB50ZL. I was prepared not to like this movie, and surprisingly, pleasantly surprised that it was pretty, actually. It held my attention, that's the thing. Never mind, we could nitpick all the flaws. I've never seen a time travel movie that wasn't just full of flaws. It just, you know, they're all ridiculous, but that's okay. We have to do this to make a movie that we can enjoy. And so you have to suspend belief just to watch the movie and follow it and enjoy it. So, yeah, I could tell the characters apart like that, and I didn't have a real problem with the plot throughout. It didn't, you know, say it's all time travel movies are flawed. This wasn't any worse than most, so that's okay. It was a good length. So many movies are just too dang long, and I thought this was a good length to enjoy and move on with your life. Okay, back to net, WB50ZL.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. So, for a change, the film was the right length, and it was not too damn long. Perfect. Next up is Virginia, NV5F. Virginia, what'd you think about the plot from KE5ICX?
Thank you, Tom. And we got a good crowd tonight. Well, it's gonna be kind of what Brenda said. It's gonna kind of sound like last week. The movie was not as, you know, just terrible as I thought it could be. I do remember this movie coming out. I don't remember it coming out at the theater, but I remember it being on cable. I remember seeing ads for it or seeing it on the schedule on HBO years ago after it came out. And I mean, it's such a typical 80s B science fiction, you know, movie where back then when the budgets were low, they at least tried to get the money like in the actors and on the screen, and they weren't going to pad out some low budget movies. Just, you know, they suffer from people who just have money but don't have a good script, and they don't know they have a good script, and so they make this super long movie because they're just crummy at script writing, and the movie's just too long. But this one was, the plot was simple. It did have a little bit of that convolution that you get in a time travel plot. It wasn't any more implausible than the other version of time travel. I think there's been other movies maybe where people time travel by entering other people's bodies. Quantum Leap is kind of like that. But this is unique in that I guess you could only enter an ancestor's body, and I guess you could only go to the past to try to affect what was going on in the present. And then you could, of course, return to where you came from. So it was different. It was different than any other time travel thing I had ever seen, and I thought the plot was just tight and easy to follow, and it was a Christmas movie, so we definitely have to mention that. Very seasonal, and thankfully short. In fact, very tight and efficient story-wise. In fact, I thought with the whole idea of it being called trancers and being about these kind of tranced, zombified people who are enslaved to carry out the will of the bad guys, that there could have been a little more there. There could have been a little, I noticed there was people and they weren't impossible to kill, and there wasn't that stupid zombie thing where even though they move like at, 1 mile an hour, no one can seem to outrun them. So I liked that they were not, hard to defeat. But there could have been a little more with that. There could have been a little more suspense, and maybe a few more trancers show up. I did like the establishing scene of the old lady. She's the old lady running the diner, working at the diner, and then you think all of a sudden they're like fighting with her, and she's hard to beat and all that. That was kind of a cool. I liked the hook into the movie. It had the great old 80s B sci-fi horror movie / feel to it. Low budget but watchable. Some good good mise-en-scène, some good colors, some reasonable characters. Like Brenda said, characters you can tell apart. Some funny, some humor. There was a little bit of humor with some kids. It was fun in the 80s. They'd throw a kid or two in there and make a scene pretty funny. And, I thought the plot was, you could follow it. It was to the point and must have set up a pretty decent scenario for a cult following in the number of sequels. It didn't achieve the status of something like Highlander, but it kind of has that same vibe, like, just that this is kind of cool, and people keep, people stay interested in it on some level. I'll go back to net in V5F.
All right, thank you, Virginia. Well, the fact that they made all these sequels and seem to make money suggests that others would agree. Next up is Sean, KB9SOK. He's the last of the folks that saw the film, besides myself. Sean, what did you think about the plot?
Yeah, this is KB9SOK. I agree with what everybody said. Yes, it's very similar to last week's. It's very watchable. I was a little worried in the first few minutes as we started. I thought, oh boy. But it actually turned out to be, got a little better as it went on. As everybody said, that the whole time travel thing, it was easy to follow. It really wasn't bad. It was kind of unique. I think Virginia hit it on the head when it's a lot like Quantum Leap on some level. It's probably the closest thing to it. I did have to think it's funny that, of course, it's coming out when it did. The whole transfer thing, that only weak-minded people could be influenced. So it almost kind of makes you think of the whole Star Wars, the Jedi mind trick. So it seems like they were borrowing from a lot of other movies. We had New York underwater, kind of like Planets from the Apes. Then we had kind of the mind trick. Then we kind of had the time travel, which had been done pretty heavily, but this was kind of a little bit somewhat unique in that respect. One thing I thought was kind of funny was, you got this top secret facility that, the government's supposed to keep tight reins on, but yet it seems like anybody can sneak in there and use it and travel. Back in time, you think this thing would have more guards and more security, be maybe like 100 feet underground or something. The actual sequel, 1.5, which I started playing on Tubi right afterwards, so I went and watched it, and it's even shorter than the first movie. It's less than an hour, and it's like, kind of a similar situation. Somebody easily sneaks in there and uses it again. So I thought that was, you think it'd be guarded better. But what was also kind of interesting, too, is, you're right, Bill, there was some talk about, the ancestry and about, essentially him, the person he was in or taking control of, which essentially was his great-great-great grandfather. And so it is it would be a weird situation, but, technically it's just his consciousness being put into that body, which kind of led me to another thought that, at the end of the movie, they let him stay. And you think that would be some kind of, the government wouldn't allow him to stay there just because essentially he's taking over another person's life and taking that life from that original person. So there'd be some moral things to think about there. Even if you're using it to try to affect the future, you're still obviously temporarily taking over somebody's life and could get them killed. So there would definitely be some moral things, but obviously being just a kind of a fun, lighthearted movie, you're not going to get too deep into that. But I agree with what everybody said. It's just kind of a lighthearted, just kind of a fun little movie to watch. It's definitely not a deep thinker or anything like that, but that's okay. It definitely fit the 80s style, as everybody said, kind of what they did back then. But at least it did keep our attention, which was kind of funny last night, because normally when a movie's pretty good, there's very little chatter on the back channels, and last night there was a lot of chatter. This one turned out to be an okay movie, so yeah. Anyway, it was interesting. Back to net, KB9 SOK.
All right, very good. Thank you, Sean. Let's see. The last two folks, that would be James and Robert, did not see the film. Let me go ahead and ask them anyway. James, KG5PMN, you're up in Oklahoma right now. Would you be willing to roll the dice and watch this fine film based on the comments that you've already heard? This film is called Transfers from 1984.
Kilo Go 5, Papa Mike November, James up here in Oklahoma. He used to participate with the group several years ago, and I kind of dropped out of it, and to pick up and start watching the Afterglow movie and get with Tom and find out what he's got coming up next. It might be an interesting movie to watch. I'll have to see if I can't get Tubi loaded up on one of the devices and see if can't get on the...
All right, very good, James. Well, you broke up a little bit there, do a little something with the audio, but now I remember, because this call sign looked familiar to me, but it's been quite a while. I think it's been exactly at least 2 years ago since you were participating. Well, come on back. We still have a lot of fun talking about the movies. You can go to Afterglow Movie on Facebook, and we've moved the movies over to what's called the Guide. Just look for one of the tabs in there that says Guide, and then click on it, and you'll find the movie list there. They stopped doing the document thing, and there was so much... It was so bothersome to set it up that I just gave up. And I found that the Guide actually worked, because you could take messages, postings, and put them together, cobble them together easily, and change dates if I needed to, or substitute a movie with very little trouble. So that's, but it is hidden a little bit. So if you go there, you'll find it. Otherwise, just if you're in the chat over there, put your email address in, and I will add you to the list, and you can get it as an email as well. Either way, you can get the movie updates. All right, James, thank you. Next is Robert, AA5AH. Robert, if you're still out there, is this a film that you would be willing to watch again from KE5, or would be willing to watch even this time travel film, even though you have not seen it, based on our conversation? What do you think?
It sounds like it'd be an interesting film to watch. Back in the 80s, they had a lot of time travel shows, like even Back to the Future. That was another one. But, yeah, it'd be interesting to watch. I was just trying to figure out how to get to the Afterglow links, and you just explained it. So, yeah, I'm on the Facebook page now, and hopefully I'll catch the next one. But, yeah, I'll try to watch this one. I'm about to pass out now. I got up early this morning and volunteered in a Richardson parade, so with the Richardson Wireless Club. But I'm kind of, like I said, I'm starting to fade, but it is an interesting movie, and I'll try to watch it, watch the next week's one if I get up to it. So that's all I have. I'll probably go ahead and check out. I'm getting tired. So AA5AH. Catch you all next week.
All right, Robert. Well, we appreciate you checking in. I'm with you, brother. I get up, well, I was up at 4 a.m. this morning. That's pretty normal for me. But I do try and take a nap in the afternoon and see if I can hold out. But even then, the day still runs along. Yeah, come on back next time. And, yeah, one of the things, and I'll go into my comments, is that, the time travel thing was really big. We had, of course, Back to the Future, which was the big time travel thing. Was there another one I was trying to think of? Well, I was thinking of Blade Runner, which is not a time travel story, but it is had a similar plot with cops and police type of thing, which I made reference in my highly accurate description of this film. In fact, they kind of stole a few things with the spinner, the crappy spinner look and all that, but that comes from, we can discuss on the special effects. I thought the idea was interesting. I agree with everyone else. I found that it was kind of distracting in a way because it had weaknesses, which we will discuss, mainly the acting, with the exception of Helen Hunt, who actually had an engaging role with the improbable relationship with Jack Death. But in any case, she was probably the best actor in the entire film. Let's see, what else can I say? Plot, reasonable length, yeah, I agree. I think this would have been very entertaining if they had taken and played up the Peter Gunn or Philip Marlowe vibe. Jack liked his trench coat and all that, and he wanted to play. He loves the cars and all that. He has this kind of like vibe, retro vibe, and now he gets to live it. And I thought they should have played that one up just a little bit more. I think that would have been a lot of fun. Maybe quoting from movies, or he had his 38 though. I guess in a way they did do that, but I think they could have probably played it up a little more. We had what was it? The other film I can think of is Ted and what is it? Ted and Bill. I can't think of it. Whatever it is, the time travel thing with the phone booth. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. That it actually kind of looked a little bit like that. I think that came out at the same time. I think they stole from that as well. So it definitely did catch me when they did the Mom 3 thing, and she turned into a trancer, and that was kind of entertaining, although it was a bit confusing. I was hoping there would be more of that, and there was some of it. Overall, of course, it's hilarious that it's a holiday movie. It's Christmas time, which you didn't expect, but there it is. And Ashley's Jewelry or something was there. Ashley's Jewelry. And the mall is filled with people. Well, no mall is full of people anymore. So the death to the mall, thanks to direct delivery stuff now that we're all familiar with. But all in all, it was an innocent foray into yet one of those time travel stories. But overall, it wasn't too bad. It wasn't great, but I might watch it again. Although I think maybe I'll go for one of the sequels, since they said that the sequels are actually better made, or at least the next one was. So we'll see about that. All right. Anyone else want to check in before we continue? Please come with your call, your name, and did you see the fine film Trancers from 1984? Okay, I expected that. We'll go to the top. Back to Tony, NT5TM. Tony, talk about characterization. You should be finished with the film by now, so tell us, what do you think about the characters and the acting from KE5ICX?
Well, Tom, thank you very much. I really appreciate your being here. Unfortunately, even though I'm drinking tap water, I'm going to have to drop out. Maybe I had too much fox hunting or something. I can't stop yawning. So this will be my last round. However, the characters kept me engaged. It was neat to see a young Helen Hunt there. Yes, I agree with other comments. I think she did a great job. I was kind of sad because, when you watch a B movie, you kind of expect some eye candy, and that didn't happen. But, such is life. Sometimes I just have to make do with being able to tell the characters part. I would like to nominate as an extra character, though, the 80s. Oh, the pastel lights. Every male seemed to wear a David Byrne-style big suit. He really was onto something when he did that and stopped making sense, because he just took the shoulder pads and added like steel reinforced plates to them to make them look even bigger. And yeah, they all seem to be wearing these exaggerated suits. The costumes, the neon lights, the pastels, the punk aesthetic, whether it was denim or leather. I mean, yeah, the 80s was absolutely a character in this movie. And I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the neon, but I can hardly stay awake. So, sadly, I must depart with my thanks for everyone's comments. NT5TM.
Okie dokie, thank you, Tony. But believe me, I'm fighting sleep myself this evening, so I understand. I think people are going to drop like flies, but we'll see what we can do. Thanks for your comments. Yep, I think your character was the 1980s as well. Okay, Bill, you're up. N5BB, what'd you think of characterization from KE5ICX?
Well, thank you, Tom. This is N5BB. Well, Irving decided to have their holiday parade starting at 6 p.m. today, which was a much more reasonable time for a Christmas parade. And it was in the dark, so all the lights really show off really nicely for the things in the parade. They were all lit up with lights. Anyway, so let's see. Characterization and acting. I agree that Helen Hunt was the best actor in this. I think she did a great job. And Tim Thomerson did an okay job also with what he did, which was playing a pretty rough character, And, of course, she was a very sweet character. One interesting tidbit, this was Helen's first real acting job as an adult. She was 20 years old when the thing was actually filmed. Tim Thomerson was 38, so there's a big age difference, and he was getting, I guess, prematurely gray, so there's all this gray in his beard and his head. But he looked to me a lot older than 38, but he was only 38 when this occurred, but he was 18 years older than Helen Hunt. This is one of her very early career things, and she did several of these Trancers movies, as well as Thomerson did also. The other characters, the one that played Whistler, I guess maybe he was told to play this stone-faced character. I don't know. To me, that was a little bit too over the top. He was just too evil, nearly. Just no emotion on his face, and I don't know. To me, that was overwritten. I think to be too evil. But I didn't have any problem with any of the other people. I thought the guy that played the baseball guy that was down in the dumps in Skid Row was kind of neat. I thought he did a fine job, and it was written pretty interestingly to show him them having to try to rescue him from Skid Row, and he was just grabbing any kind of alcohol he could at any moment. That was kind of funny, a little comic relief there. And, of course, he nearly dies. Jack Death kind of saved him from death several times. I like the idea that Helen Hunt as Lena was very brave. At some point, he said, "This is going to be dangerous." She says, "I don't care." So she played a very, very brave woman in this. It was kind of interesting and everything. A very feminist kind of character there in this. What I want to know about is the character. I'm trying to think. Was his name Peter? Whatever character was that Jack Death, whose body he went into. That poor guy disappeared. So there's somebody that effectively was killed in all this. The guy that was in the body that Tim Thomerson took over. And of course, it was interesting that his great grandson or something, ancestor, his great ancestor, looked exactly the same as he did, which was kind of weird. I also thought it was really funny the way that the other counselor came back as this young woman, this young girl. I thought that was really funny. So I liked that plot point and the way it was acted and everything. I thought that was great. So in other words, I was really happy with, I think, the performances in this kind of movie and the characterizations I was happy with. The movie wasn't perfect, but, compared to some of the other stinkers we had, this was very likable. And likability is what really matters. In 5BB. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah, I agree. Likability is everything. And we had interesting and likable characters, which I think explains the fact there were so many sequels, and it got some positive reviews from some significant people in the industry, too. All right, next up is Bill, W5BLT. Bill, what do you think of the characterization and the acting in our fine film this evening from KE5ICX?
Hey, Tom. I've always kind of liked Helen Hunt and things that she's done. So when I saw that, on having her in there, I figured, well, okay, she's going to do the character well. She did. I think the one guy, his great grandfather, or however far it went back, the body that Jack inhabited, I thought his name was Phil, but I could be wrong. But yeah, I agree with Phil. What happened to him, and then all the people that he met and affected, there could be some sort of ripple in time, you would think, because it's really disruptive. And now Jack's left here. I like character. I thought the villain here, I just forgot his name. I'm getting tired too. Whistler. I thought it was funny because he sends, like every bad guy, you always see them send a little note telling you what they're going to do, and I just thought at the time when he sent the recording and stuff, well, why would you do that? Just go ahead and wipe up, if you were a smart criminal, that you just wipe them all out and, be done. But obviously in the movies they've got to add that element, and it is kind of funny because, they want the notoriety, I guess. But it is interesting, and, it's kind of weird, too, because we sort of pick up, I could have seen them doing a prequel or something on this, because we sort of pick up here at the end and, or I guess not at the end, but, we're sort of picking up, seemed like midway through a story and events that happened in the past with, Jack losing his, I think, wife. That was brought out in the movie. And I know I'm kind of talking about Sean a little bit too, but it's also characterization in that, I think it was some of that. Anyway, that's all I have for this round. I'm not sure I'll have anything for the third round, but anyway, I like the movie. I'll probably watch the sequel, but I'm not sure that I'll go for the other four, but I at least want to see the second one. W5BLT, back to you, Net Control.
Okie dokie, Bill. Well, I hope you're around for the next round, but if you're not, fully understand. Hopefully I'll be around for the next round. I have fallen asleep during this very net, and I was Net Control, so it's possible. Next up is Brenda, WB50ZL. Brenda, what did you think about characterization and the acting for our fine film from KE5ICX? Brenda, WB50ZL, have you fallen asleep or wandered off? You're being called.
Oops, sorry. This is WB50ZL. I did fall asleep, actually. But it's been a long day, so that's what happens. Are we talking about the characters now?
Yes, for the last 10, 15 minutes.
Well, I wasn't sure how long I had been asleep, so I didn't know where I had drifted off. I liked the characters. I thought it was pretty authentic. It was sort of a kind of a feel. And I think they were sort of maybe a little exaggerated or larger than life, but it was fun watching them. They were enjoyable. So the main character, he was a little bit, he was kind of rough, and you kind of didn't think you were going to like him much because he was sort of, a tough character, but I did in the end. I think he didn't seem as one-dimensional by the end as he did in the beginning. And the Helen Hunt character, they were just kind of an unlikely pair, but that's okay. That happens in life too. And all the characters, the homeless people, they were kind of funny, and it was, I thought they did a good job on the whole. Okay, back to that, WB50ZL.
Okay, hang in there. There's one more round after this. Next is NV5F, Virginia. You know the drill. Characterization. Good, bad, what? From KE5ICX.
Okay, well, likable characters, bad guys. Yeah, Helen Hunt. She's just always likable. And I'm gonna go off of what you said a little bit in the plot round, which is the whole maybe even fleshing out the Jack Death character and making him a little more of a, kind of getting his affinities in there a little bit more of the fish out of water discovering, a new. That was a very typical thing in the 80s too. We had movies like, Splash or Short Circuit or E.T. or whatever. There was a lot of that kind of making humor out of kind of the being out of place and discovering your interests in the time or place you find yourself and kind of making them work for you, in humor, sense of humor or whatever. And I guess it was Bill earlier mentioned that Helen Hunt's character was very brave and adventurous, and I think she, as I recall, Jack kind of inhabited her boyfriend's body, and she fell in love with him and very quickly, and was actually very open and vulnerable about how in love with him she was and how much she wanted him to, be in love with her as well. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And I liked what they did with kids. There was a couple scenes with kids, and that Santa Claus scene in the mall was pretty funny, and it was supposed to be a little bit like disturbing and over the top, but it wasn't too gross or too horrible, and it was it's just the right amount of character in all those characters. Just enough humor, just enough suspense, I thought characters are what make, what likable characters. It's what keeps you watching, even if the budget's low and the plot's not great or super complicated. I like these characters, and I might take a look at some more of these movies. It wasn't my cup of tea when I was younger, when they were first on, when this one was first on, but now it's just kind of fun to look back and see something for the first time that came out, and being so familiar with that era and all the stereotypes of 80s movies and the punk rock thing, how they throw in a lot of the 80s stuff, and you see it's kind of fun to see it for real versus now when they try to do 80s period movies and they're trying to get it right, and you see it when it really was happening, and you can look back now and kind of see all the little nuances of even how they played characters, and I like these characters, and even the old washed-up baseball player, he was likable, and the moment when Helen Hunt crashed her scooter into the old guy's house in the middle of the night early on Christmas morning, I guess, and said Merry Christmas, just the humor was good, and the acting was pretty good, and not too bad in V5F.
Okay, very good. And I'd like to comment about the acting styles from different generations. That's very, very true. I hadn't thought about that, but we're so far out from the 1980s now that came after. Okay, next up is Sean, KB9SOK. Sean, your thoughts on characterization and acting?
Yeah, this is KB9SOK. I agree with what everybody said. I do think Helen Hunt was the strongest. I agree. It does reflect the acting in the 80s. Things had the tendency to be a little over the top a little bit. But that's, that was just style then. And yeah, I like our main protagonist. I think he was okay. Yeah, at first he was, kind of maybe not the most likable character, but you learn to like him, and as the show went on, which was, I think the intent there. I agree with everybody. I think the former baseball star was pretty good. I thought the little girl was funny. I think really most of the characters were pretty decent. I think probably, to me, the worst character in this thing was actually the villain. I just think he was very bland. Didn't really show any emotion. I guess that was supposed to mean he was mean, but he didn't really. I don't know. I never got the feeling that he was truly the super evil. We've seen way better bad guys in other films. So yeah, I think he was the weakest character in this particular film. The three people that were on the board or the lead people were kind of they weren't kind of bland too. But all in all, not bad. But once again, I think Helen Hunt was the strongest. But it went, for this time period. Yeah, it's once again, this isn't going to be an Emmy-winning kind of thing. So, but all in all, it's still enjoyable. Back to net, KB9S, okay.
All right, thank you, Sean. And I guess we're in agreement on that one. Interesting. Okay, let me see here. James, KG5PMN, I know you're still out there. You have any comments, I don't know, about 80s movies and acting? Maybe I could throw that one your way from KE5ICX.
This is KG5PMN. I don't know. I don't really have that much comment about the 80s acting or movies. I kind of like looking at the older vehicles and stuff like that in the movies. I kind of grew up with. But as far as acting goes, I guess maybe nowadays all the computer and AIs and all that, I haven't kept up with the latest movies, so I don't know if all the computer and AI stuff makes it a whole lot different or not. Back to the net, KG5PMN.
Okie dokie, thank you, James. And yeah, well, that's always a part of every movie, which is kind of cool. What do you see as far as film, as automobiles from that time period? And as Virginia mentioned, you've got all of the little nuances and things that go along with the 1980s because it's captured right in the here and now at that time, and then it becomes kind of a time travel story, which isn't a real time travel story where you're really talking about what's going on at that time in period. So, okay, let's see. I think Robert may be gone. AA5AH. Robert, you still out there? You got anything you want to add about the 1980s, perhaps, from KE5ICX? Okay, he said he was probably going to take off. I don't blame him. Okay, so really don't have a lot more to add to the characterizations. I did not know that Tim Thomerson was as young as he was. He certainly looked old to me. He looked more like he was in his mid to late 40s, maybe 50s. Maybe the premature hair, gray hair may have done something with it. The slicked back hair was kind of like, that was so so out of style at that point. I don't know, Vitalis or something. Just like a lot of dab will do you, I guess. That's a pretty old thing. I did notice that it had a couple of people in it. Richard Hurd was in it. He played the Chairman Spencer. He sort of looks like Carl Malden and plays a kind of Carl Malden characters back then. He had been in the made-for-TV series B, which he was quite good in. I liked him in that, by the way. He didn't have a major role, but he had a pivotal role throughout that miniseries. and I think he came back for the later miniseries, if I remember correctly. Pretty interesting guy. I like seeing him in the thing. Helen Hunt, by far, was the best actor in the whole thing. She was very likable, and interestingly, with sort of a distraction with Tim, but now that I know that he was younger than I actually was, even though there was still a 15-year difference between them, it was maybe a little better that way. The other actors, yeah, I love Santa Peter Scrum, I guess is his name. He played the Santa Claus, which was quite fun, and the kids are running for cover when all that happened. Look what Santa Claus is up to. So I thought that was pretty fun. Michael Stefani as Martin Whistler. I'm with the rest of you. I'm not sure what to make of the guy. He's sort of like this, I don't know, pretty boy, maniacal, supervillain type character, chewing up scenery, but there wasn't much to him beyond that. There was no motivations per se. Why is he doing this? There should have been, and maybe this is where the script could have been a little better, there should have been another reason, something maybe family related. Maybe Jack Death or Phil Deathton, whatever, was, and notice the name is Death and Death's son. The ancestor name, he changed it. Maybe there was some sort of thing there above and beyond that might have been a better motivator than just simply wiping people out just to wipe them out to gain some sort of advantage. I mean, it seems like an awful lot of work to do that, and the motivation is kind of almost too weird, too excessive. There's not enough to make that happen, I guess. But I don't know, maybe time travel was really super easy back then. A couple of things, too, I thought was interesting. There's, from the internet, I watch I don't know, Grand Theft Auto 5 thing. There's a couple, I haven't done it in recent months, but there's a character called McNulty in it that I went, oh, now I know where that name came from, and it came from this movie, the Art LaFleur character. So I thought that was kind of fun, and that character in Grand Theft Auto is actually a cop, really, and it's a live-action person that plays the character. So that was kind of interesting, knowing where the origin is. What else? Nothing else really to add to the other characterization. The gal who played, I guess, Baby McNulty, Allison Croft, she was pretty funny. She really had that character down, the McNulty character down quite well. As she shows up at the door as the kid, gal, at the end, that she's talking like him and acting like him, and that was pretty funny. I enjoyed that. And so overall, on an ensemble, I agree with everyone else. I thought that there was a lighthearted effort here that actually kind of played well into the film, and that may have been what kind of put us on a positive trajectory for the film overall. We didn't take it too seriously, because if we did, we'd hate the film. So the actors played it a little more lighthearted. For Stefani, it was more maniacal and over the top. But overall, I think it worked out quite well as far as characterization. Okay, let's see, 11:42. We got time for the third round. I'm skipping Tony. We're going to go to Bill and talk about the special or not so special effects or anything else you want to discuss about the film. So, Bill, N5BB, go ahead. This is last 73 round. Let's call it that. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Tom. This is N5BB. There was one kind of interesting aspect of the whole thing. In fact, I was wondering if you... Let me ask you a question, Tom. Did you choose this movie because it was set in Christmas, around Christmas time?
No, Bill, I wish I could have had the forethought to know that. Now, we've rearranged these films a couple of times, and I think it actually was going to appear earlier than it did, sometime in November, but we changed it because we had another film, 2010, I think, popped in. So no, I wish it was all planned that way, but it was just an accident. KE5ICX.
Thank you. Well, since I went to the Irving parade this evening, it really worked out well. I watched half of the movie before the parade and half the movie after the parade. And this movie, of course, is set at Christmas time in 1984 or whatever. And that adds a lot of comic things to it. And some things that are very improbable. Like, you notice that what's her name? Lena? Helen Hunt's character? Her boss is a Santa Claus, and he is one of the Trancers, which is very improbable. Why would he happen to be a Trancer? But, you know, it adds a little comic thing to it where who's the first person that Jack Death kills, shoots? Santa Claus. So I really, if you think about it, there's a really funny aspects of this movie. There's some things that are played straight but are very, very comical. And some of the things that Lena says and does are also, if you think about it, pretty comical. But they're played straight, but they're really pretty funny. And the whole scene in the disco club where some of her friends are kind of worried about this other guy showing up, the old guy showing up, and that fight, that's actually kind of comical. So I kind of like that part. I think that's one of the things that made the movie enjoyable, was these little comic things they threw in there, and we don't even realize how many they put in there. And everybody always ends up liking a movie set around Christmas. You know, we remember all these old Christmas movies from the past, and that adds a little, you know, panache to the whole thing. Another thing is, one interesting thing about this movie, it was filmed in 1983-84 about time travel to that time. For us, 40 years later, this movie essentially is time travel to 1984. It's 40 years in the past. Now, some of us, like me, remember that age very well. You know, I was about 30 years old then. Some of other you probably weren't born. But I still think it's really neat to have a movie like this that was actually filmed in its own time, if you know what I mean. And it's about time travel, people coming to that time, but we can really, a lot of us that are old enough can really connect with the film, because it's like time travel to something that we remember 40 years ago, which I thought was kind of a neat part of it. Of course, when they filmed it, they weren't thinking about that, but right now, looking back at it, you know, that's kind of a neat thing. It's like the Star Trek movies when they went back in time to the, the 20th century. Okay, that's all I got. And again, I give it a good thumbs up. N5BB.
Okie dokie, thank you, Bill. And yeah, I agree with you there too. And the Star Trek films are always good because they have that time travel element. And they always go to contemporary, you know, our real-time Earth. But because these things last forever, and we go back and watch them, they really do become the time travel stories. Next it is Bill, W5BLT, the other Bill. Bill, what did you think about special effects or anything else you want to talk about on the film from KE5ICX?
I'm not sure. Really, there didn't seem to be that many special effects. I will say the music, the punk rock music there at the downstairs party brought back some memories of that time period. And you know, it's interesting when we're talking about Santa, the kid reading off the Christmas list. That brought back some memories on on all the toys, and so it was kind of a neat little excursion back. I just remember watching it, and as he's going through the Christmas list, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. That's kind of fun. But yeah, I'm going to say one thing too. The watch really bothered me. This is kind of my last thing. That the watch was such from 1 second to 10 seconds. Like, what was the limit on why 10 seconds? Like, what? There's some kind of physics that prevented going further. I don't know. Anyway, it's kind of slowed down time, but you could only do it for 10 seconds. But it was just kind of weird. And the way my body is with watches, I don't know, something about my chemistry. I just seem to run every watch I have had. And so that, I guess I wouldn't have done well with that watch. That's all I've got. Again, good to be back with you. I've been listening the past couple of weeks, but under the weather, so it's good to participate again fully in the net. W5BLT.
All right, well, very good, Bill. And, oh, yeah, and the toy thing was quite interesting, too. I thought that was fun. All of the toys that we had forgotten from the 1980s. By the way, just to let you know, your signal is really kind of noisy tonight. You might want to check, I don't know, maybe from TechNet they said check feed line. You might want to do that or something. Your signal is unusually weak tonight, so something has changed since last week. Next up is Brenda, WB50ZL. Brenda, wake up! You get to talk about the special effects or anything you want about the film, and then you can go to bed, unless you're already in bed, which you may be. Go ahead, from KE5ICX.
WB50ZL, I never know anymore. I think I'm a zombie. I can't say much about special effects. It just, you know, it just wasn't much there. What I really enjoyed are just the little odd touches here and there, some of the set pieces and the costumes, the nostalgia for that decade, which of course I remember really well, and the music, and it was just kind of a fun period piece. And the cars, like those a lot. So I don't have a lot more to offer. It's almost midnight, so I think I'm probably going to wrap it up here soon. So I'll end it there. WB50ZL.
Okie dokie. Well, let's move on then. Virginia, NV5, your final comments from KE5ICX.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, the funny thing to me is the music in these kind of movies. It was done on synthesizers. It was cheap to do that way. You didn't have to hire an orchestra or a high-end composer, and it's kind of a hallmark of the low-budget movies. And it's so funny how now they're trying to imitate that, you know, in shows like Stranger Things and the 80s period shows. And then that leads me to one of my other remarks I wanted to make, which is it is fun to watch a very 80s movie from the mid-80s and then think of all the things now that are trying to imitate that. And I love to watch period 80s shows and pick out all the anachronisms in them. And it's amazing how many anachronisms are in the current attempts at period 80s things. Even as much as like a turn of phrase, like an expression that they have somebody say in a show like Stranger Things. I keep mentioning that one because it's one of the more popular ones in the last few years. But they'll have them say like an expression that we hadn't even conceived of back in the 80s. And one of them was, I remember what it was. It was a 90s period thing. I was watching Young Sheldon, and there was a reference. Sheldon's mom was referring to giving someone the stink eye. And I was like, we did not have that expression back in the 90s. And there's quite a few of them in that show. And so that's one of my favorite things in the current attempts at this period is when they throw in something that totally we didn't say or even conceive of back then. And, so it's kind of neat to go back and watch something that I hadn't seen from the 80s and just see the 80s from kind of a fresh perspective simply because I just didn't see this movie then, and so I'm seeing it through the eyes of like a film critic because I'm watching it for this net, and I'm seeing it the 80s more objectively because I'm watching them from now in a movie that I hadn't seen at the time, so I don't have any emotional ties to it. I don't have any, memory of it, and kind of makes me want to go back and watch the sequels and maybe watch some other like B level 80s things that I didn't really get into at the time because they just weren't my cup of tea. Because I was a kid then, I was more into, just younger things, and this was not really the kind of thing I was interested in. But now it's kind of interesting to watch these. So a good little slice of that decade, and just that genre, the B sci-fi genre that is now kind of trendy. So I'll leave it at that. NV5F.
Okay, thank you, Virginia. Next is Sean, KB9SOK. Sean, your final parting comments for tonight.
Yeah, this is KB9SOK. Well, once again, I agree with everybody on it. I think the look was, does bring you back to the 80s. I was in high school back in the 80s. I remember them times rather well. It's kind of funny to some extent seeing that, and being I hadn't seen this movie either back in the 80s, which I'm surprised because I back then I very much enjoyed watching a lot of the B movies on cable late at night. So I'm surprised I hadn't seen this one, and especially being a whole series. But yeah, it is. I agree. The music was definitely what they like to use back in the 80s for B movies. It's like stock, synthesizer music. I wasn't into punk rock, so I couldn't tell you if that was authentic or not. But as far as special effects, as everybody said, wasn't a whole lot there. The watch. I think it'd been funnier if they'd used a Casio, because it seemed like I remember everybody back there wearing Casio watches. that typical one that's supposed to look high tech. The only weird effect they had is just kind of when they killed the tracers that they dissolved and glowed red. That part, kind of going back to the plot, didn't make a lot of sense, just because people's minds were being influenced. Why would they dissolve after, being killed? So that was one special effect I don't think was really necessary, but I guess it made it easy for them to clean up so there's no bodies left behind. And also last night, too, I thought it was quite funny. Everybody on the I was watching last night was making references to that one prop that was used in very many science fiction shows back in the 80s. So, I thought the prop looked familiar, but I didn't realize just how many shows that was used in. So that was quite amusing. It was interesting. Looking forward to what we're watching next week. So, this is KB9SOK, back to net.
All right, very good. Thank you, Sean. Thank you for your comments. And I'll make my final comments on the film. Let's see. Special effects, there weren't any. They tried to do the spinner thing from Blade Runner. That was sort of a crude construct. The most fun, I think, was probably the fact that we had our principal character like the class person. His one comment when he's driving the Thunderbird, the 57 Thunderbird, is, "I love this car," which I thought was pretty hilarious. And of course, he had his own classic. I can't remember what it was that he was driving. That in the 23rd century, he managed to have some sort of a Frankenstein. Anything else I could say about it? Music was annoying. It was electronic music, then it was just minimalistic, which is about what you had. I mean, it was pretty much a MIDI device that would play. So, yeah, you had that. Other things, oh, the one thing I noticed, which I'm not sure, but where they did the whole thing before he goes back into time and he heads to the beach, the background, it looked very familiar to me. I think it's the same place where they filmed Planet of the Apes, the final sequence from Planet of the Apes with the Statue of Liberty. I think it's the same spot. I'm not absolutely sure, but I think it is. It just had the right vibe. Go back and look and see if you agree. Okay, that's it from me. Next week's movie is going to be something unusual. It is a fan homage film called Star Trek of Gods and Men. I remember when this thing came out about 11 years ago, and I kind of enjoyed it. It has its problems with the fan creation, but it's got a few actors from Star Trek, including the captain of the Enterprise D. So you'll get him, and you get the Enterprise D in that episode. Some of the special effects are quite good, actually. The stories themselves also have some interesting parts to it. About an hour and a half long. I think you'll enjoy it. If you're a Star Trek fan, you may wince a few times, but it may still be decent.
Elvis has left the building.
So there you have it. Next week, Star Trek of Gods and Men. I think it's from 2008. So I'll put the updated information. As I mentioned before, just look under guides under the Afterglow movie group, Afterglow and Movie, and do that. If you would like to get the emails that I send out separately rather than Facebook group, or you just like to have both, send an email to me at my call sign, Kilo Echo 5, India Charlie X-Ray, KE5ICX at yahoo.com. Tell me you would like to be on the movie list, and I will add you. And I try and send these things out if I don't run into too much of a distraction Sunday mornings. So with that, I'm going to say 7-3, everybody. Had a good time. And we'll do the same thing next week. This is KE5ICX. I'm clear. I'm going to go watch a little bit of Lost in Space, and I'm going to bed. This is the Christmas episode this week called Return to Earth, with Will going back to Earth. So we'll see you next time. This is KE5ICX. Now clear.
By the way, Tom, somebody said there were no special effects. There were special effects. When the Trancers died, they turned blue and they left with kind of a black powder. And also, the Trancers had bad skin, so which I thought was a really cheap special effect. But anyway, there were special effects, such as they were. In 5B, be clear.
Oh, so true, Bill. All right, catch you later. Take care. This is KE5ICX. I'm also clear.
Okay, my turn for parting shots. They turned red when they died, not blue, and that wasn't MIDI music. That was analog synthesizers. They weren't Moog synthesizers, but they were definitely analog. And speaking of Lost in Space, there is a Julian's auction coming up next week, and they have a lot of movie props, everything from Forbidden Planet all the way to Harry Potter and Star Wars. They also have a toy Johnny 5 from the movie Short Circuit 2, and they have a Lost in Space robot, and they're projecting that it's going to go for around anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000. So I downloaded the catalog just to look at all the cool stuff. There's no way I'm going to bid on anything, but fun stuff to look at on there. So anyway, that's it for me. NV5S.
Yeah, that's all from the Greg Gine collection. He's a fellow that died, well, far too young, who was on Star Trek Next Generation special effects, and he had collected a lot of stuff from 60s memorabilia. The Lost in Space robot came into his possession. That is the stunt double. There was a stunt double that they created in the third season. It's made mostly out of fiberglass. Somebody who had it before him actually did a restoration job on it, which was actually too good. They restored it back to what the hero robot, or the heavy-duty one that they used throughout the series. It looks very close to that, whereas as a stunt robot, it lacked a lot of the details. And it appeared in 2 or 3 episodes of the third season only. But in any case, it was interesting.
W5FC.
There were some other items in there too. I think a spacesuit, a few things, and some Star Trek items as well. So I looked at that catalog too. I thought there were some pretty cool things, but he was a pretty cool guy anyway. All right, I'm going to try and leave now. See y'all, 85, and it's Return from Outer Space. Is the name of the episode. Bad me. I'm supposed to be the savant when it comes to Lost in Space. Must be getting too old.
Okay, Tom, good night. Yeah, all that lot, that group of lots with this Lost in Space robot and the Johnny 5 are supposed to be auctioned on December 14th. So I'll be curious to see what they go for. So yeah, it's a great collection. They have like stuff from Battlestar Galactica. They have a Twinkie costume from Buck Rogers. It's a fantastic collection in V5F.